Many thanks. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Tony Watts. I'm a lawyer with Keystone Law. It's fair to say I'm a regulatory lawyer. Increasingly, over recent years, I get queries and I get to advise people who want to do one of two things. First, they want to raise funds by more direct routes. And second, they want to actually organise platforms or ways of directing funds to those who need them, investment funds to those who need them. Very often, characteristic of crowdfunding schemes is they involve not necessarily a lot of money from a lot of people. So you would not necessarily have thought they run you into problems. Unfortunately, they quite often do. And though there is often a way round the maze, there are pitfalls that need to be considered and need to be taken into account. So going to the first, what is it? It's not a term of art. It's probably a best way of describing it is a way of funding that usually has certain characteristics. The characteristics are, usually, it's two things. It's a way of either raising investment in your own venture, or it's a way of acting as an intermediary to channel investment to other ventures, So typically, backers are asked to invest or donate a small part, not necessarily large parts, but many backers are asked to invest small parts of funds needed. Usually, but not necessarily, is it internet-based, and sometimes money collected is pooled. So, there are various crowdfunding schemes, etc., that you will hear, possibly have heard about. There are various ones in the music industry, which involve asking for money for albums, etc. Certainly in the film industry, I've had one recently whereby people are asked to donate money to actually help raise a film, to put a film together. So increasingly, there are platforms and the techniques are used in more mainstream corporate finance. So, as I say, that's what it is. Cautionary tales with some of the things that are actually done. All schemes you see, crowdfunding schemes, are innovative and proactive. But unfortunately, the law is not. So the law and regulation lags far behind what people want to do. It possibly is fair to say it lags behind what is needed for public protection. Because as I say, people don't often will not necessarily lose a lot of money by investing in these schemes. But that is unfortunately, for legal and regulatory purposes, irrelevant. It is immaterial. There are no carve-outs or exemptions, or very few, for things that are small in nature and which people do not stand to lose very much. So, crowdfunding schemes can raise significant issues in two broad areas. Licensing, broadly licensing. Does your activity require you to have a license or a regulatory authorization of some kind? And the second are promotion and advertising rules. Even if you do not need a license, actually, can you advertise it or promote it in the way that you want to? And sometimes they run together and sometimes they're distinct. The consequences of falling foul of the rules, there can be civil and regulatory issues. Regulatory authorities can say you needed a license and can go against you. There can be criminal issues. So in some cases, criminal offences can be committed. And a cunning one, actually, if rules are disobeyed, contracts can be torn up. They are potentially unenforceable. So some care and generally take advice is what I would urge in this area. So a general rule about crowdfunding models is it is a lot easier to give than to receive. That schemes that actually involve you in receiving money without having to give any return tend to run into few legal problems. And there are numerous of these, and some of them very, very clever. So donations. I gave the example of things like films, music, etc., where many social projects where people are asked to donate or to give, but they're not necessarily given any return on their investment. And people want to do this. There are some things they want to be a part of. They're quite happy to be a part of. Often they will be given something in return. I give the example particularly in films and music. I had a client recently, they will not mind saying this. Yes, they had a more conventional equity fundraising, but along with it, they actually ran a scheme where you could appear on the posters. You paid some money, you could appear on the posters, you could possibly come along to see the filming, etc. And people want to be a part of this. And there are various platforms that do the same. I think Indiegogo, some others. So they're not necessarily, they are a means of raising money, but they are not necessarily involve any return. Some quite clever examples, one I have not been involved in, but there's a couple of football clubs that are run by co-ops. They take in money, small amounts of money from large numbers of people. The people don't actually get anything out of it, but they donate, they give the money, and they get to run the club. They use a traditional mechanism known as a cooperative, and the technical name is an industrial and provident society, which gets you around some of the issues I've talked about. And as I say, it's a way of raising money, a way of participating, but it does not involve any distribution or return. And again, people are prepared to give money in these ways. Where the fault line runs is where you have money coming back. So shares of profits, interest, dividends, returns. So again, the last point, so it's possible then very often to structure quite easily around what I've called freebies. Albums, books, films, t-shirts, credits for albums, etc., or films. But the fault line and the difficulty may come the rules begin to apply when it's recognisably an investment, when there is money coming back.